Number two, I believe Mrs. Khambatta is already a co-host, so which means that she can mute and unmute herself. I will put all of you on the mute. However, you can very well unmute yourself wherever you deem fit. Okay. I will also outline to you how we will go about doing this so that we have a little decorum in place, which is that we will have a quick conversation of 30 odd minutes with Ms. Khambatta, which will be the initial first half of this dialogue. And then we will get into what I call question and answer with her, which is your question answered by her for that matter. Okay. As I said, I love doing this purely because I really love to know people more beyond what they really come on LinkedIn or you got to know them for that matter. So there are very, very, very interesting facts which I've got to know in the past few hours about Mrs. Khambatta and which is absolutely brilliant, as I said, and it actually motivates me, and it feels that I have done so little so far, by the way, right? So having said this, we'll build that up as we go along. So firstly, let me quickly start with the formal introduction. And firstly, all of you, welcome. Thank you for joining in. And I know people will continue to build up. So for the formal introduction bit, Mrs. Khambatta is at present the principal and the CEO of GEMS Modern Academy, Dubai. And she is the vice president of GEMS Education. She is the recipient of the first ever GEMS Exceptional Head of School Award in 2018. With a master's degree in microbiology, she made the transition from teaching to educational leadership and has spent 34 years in the field of education. An avid proponent of positive psychology in education, she has been a panelist and presenter at 4 international IPN conferences, IPN, not IPN, IPN conferences in USA, China, and Australia. An adventure enthusiast, she accompanied a group of 10 students, including an Emirati, to Antarctica as part of Sir Robert Swan's expedition in 2014. That is fabulous. We will actually get into that a little more as we go along. Was the convener of the 3 ICSE and ISC affiliated the Council for Indian Schools Certificate Examination New Delhi Schools in Dubai from April 2014 to March 2018, and currently for ICSC from April 2021. A passionate educator, her simple education philosophy is all children deserve to be given ample opportunity to discover their worth, their interest, and their passion in a secure and happy environment, for them to grow into confident young adults with a sound intellectual and moral compass to guide them to their goals. Fabulous. That is simple yet so powerful. Thank you very much. As I mentioned, everybody, I will quickly put her, in fact, on the spotlight so that we all get to meet her. Okay, and Mrs. Khambatta, tell everybody that she was actually I think born and raised in Devlali near Nasik in Maharashtra, which means she is very much familiar to all of us. She was just sharing with me that she was with Doon for 6 years before she left for Dubai. Okay, so if everything is all right, we will quickly begin with our first question, Mrs. Khambatta, which is, why don't you please run us through your initial years as a student firstly, a kid in India, and then we'll go to the next one.
Thank you so much, Gaurav, and hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Like Gaurav said, we've just seemed to be missing each other in terms of commitment to come on a session together. And I'm really pleased to be here because I've seen Gaurav host a number of sessions and quite the fan. So, when I was growing up, and I grew up in a small town called Devlali in Nasik. Actually, I was born in Mumbai, but raised in Devlali. And I'm one of 9 siblings. I'm number 8. So, when you're number 8, you've got to find your spot. It doesn't come easy. And I think that's where my journey started. just trying to find my spot in a family of illustrious brothers and sisters who had very strong personalities. And my mom and dad, we in those days, I don't know how many youngsters on the call, but in those days, before the street lights went out, you had to be home. That was the only rule. And the family always had dinner together. So that's the background from which I come. And when I used to go, so I went to Barnes High School in Devlali, which was a boarding cum day school. So I was a day scholar, and it was called the School on the Hill. And I absolutely loved going to school. And from kindergarten to grade 11, 12, those days, I was in the same school. And I think today it's become a fashion to start changing schools, like you go shopping for schools. But I didn't come from that background. I'm so happy because it kept me grounded. It kept me very, very focused on, on so many things. So I was very privileged and pleased to go to Barnes High School. And I was how would I explain? I was a student that didn't have to work very hard to be in the top 10, but I never had it in me. I was not self-regulated, so I never made it to the top. But effortlessly would get into the top 10. So, and I loved my school because it gave us so many opportunities. It was not a regular school, it was an ICSE school and the earlier senior Cambridge school. So we had games and we did everything but study, I think. And we had a 9 to 3, so our school was from 9 o'clock till 3 o'clock. And then I always stayed back for games because I was interested in gymnastics and hockey and athletics and just about everything that was on offer. So I enjoyed my childhood, long summer vacations where we played from marbles to hitty to everything. I had such a joyous childhood, and that's why I feel terrible when I see children stuck on their devices and really not spending quality time. We used to go on picnics and take our cycles, and there was Panch Batli, which was a hill opposite where I lived, where we'd run up and down and actually have races. And I think that's how I improved my speed as a runner. And I had just such a joyous childhood. Never was pressurized for marks, though obviously we had to get decent marks, but never got pressurized for marks. And I don't know what else you'd want to share.
Were you a reluctant topper of the class or the school? You said so.
I was never a top. I was never in the top 3, never. Okay. But top 10 effortlessly.
But you were academically brighter kid for that matter.
And you know why I think so. It's because when you're surrounded by brothers and sisters who are older than you, are always talking, you always look up to them. You hear language better than what you speak. You hear thoughts that are more profound than what you think. So when you're growing up in an environment like that, and that's again why I tell my parents in school these days that whichever guest you bring home, get your children to talk to them at the dining table. Because it's so important, because the stories that you hear from oral history, the things they kind of share is so profound that you learn by osmosis. And it's amazing. So in Dubai, we do the cognitive ability test, the CAT4 test, and that tests 4 batteries, the verbal, non-verbal, quantitative, and spatial. And I do believe that a lot, so the cognitive ability is curriculum agnostic, and it just evaluates what you've picked up along the way. And it tests that. And I say that children who really do very well in the cognitive ability test is because they've had these experiences. They've traveled, they're well read, they listen to people, and their CAT4 scores go through the roof. So I always encourage parents to, encourage their children to speak to guests they bring home and to family members, senior family members.
Okay. So since you brought up about your siblings, where are they right now? All 8 of them. Tell us.
All over the world. So I have 2 sisters in India, one in Pune, one in Jamshedpur, both in education. I have a brother in Philadelphia. I have 3 brothers in Toronto. I have a sister in Toronto and another sister in Houston. So that's all of us.
Well spread out for that matter. Yes. Wonderful. Okay, lovely. So while it was not mentioned in Mrs. Khambatta's introduction, which I read briefly, but my dear friends, she was a state level Kabaddi player, right? Once. So that's my second question, which I also asked you in through my question and answer section, which is that how did you transition, or why didn't you pursue your Kabaddi bit, say to the national level, or say further example? how did you transition from being a Kabaddi player at a state level, which is a big deal to begin with, number one, and then maybe to education? How did that transition happen?
So that year I actually made it to the nationals, but they didn't have the nationals that year. So I missed the opportunity. But so Kabaddi also was by chance, Gaurav. It's just that I was a natural athlete. And so one day they were short of one Kabaddi player and they said, Nargish, will you fill in? I said, okay. And I said, explain the rules of the game. And they explained it. And I think in the very first game itself, the coach liked what he saw. And so he took me to the team. So while I loved sport.
So hold on. Did you play for a while Kabaddi? But since your selection was by chance, did you play?
So I got spotted when I was in grade 12.
Okay.
And I was watching a match and one of our players actually got injured. The one player shot and the coach just took me on, quickly explained the rules and got me registered and put me in. Yeah. But so I played right through my undergraduation.
Okay.
And then I went to Baroda for my post-graduation. So I don't know of anybody who played Kabaddi in Baroda. So
MS University, you went to the
MS University.
I was very recently in Baroda. Okay.
So I went to Ahmednagar College in Ahmednagar for my undergrad. And that's how. So how did I get to be a teacher? As a youngster, you romanticize every profession. So at one point I wanted to be a doctor. Then I seriously wanted to join the army, very seriously, because I was athletically inclined, and I was very patriotic and still am. When the national anthem plays, even now my husband laughs, but if it plays, I will stand up wherever I am. So he still laughs at me for doing that. But So I went through my mind. I went through a number of professions, including being a doctor. I actually didn't get through to being a doctor. So they didn't accept women in the army. So after my grade 12, I said, let me try for the AFMC. So I applied for the exam. But my mom had gone to Iran for my sister's delivery at that time. So I just couldn't prepare, not blaming anything or anybody, but I didn't get through that examination. So I didn't become a doctor. My friends joined microbiology. So, herd instinct, I joined it for microbiology. But I found that a lot of my friends, they liked my explanations better than the professor's explanations. So I would be explaining difficult concepts. And if I didn't understand, I'd read it. If my friend asked me to, I would read it and then explain it to her. And she'd say, I understood it better than when Sir explained it. So somewhere at the back of my mind, I think it was, it's good to be a teacher somewhere.
Well, so when did you really took that sort of a decision, if I may say that, okay, I wish to be really, really a teacher, exactly? Because you were contemplating many options, right?
I was, yes. So when I did my master's, so when I went to MS University Baroda and did my master's, everybody was applying to go to the US. And even I was toying with the idea, joined up for PhD, but then I met my future husband and all my plans went awry. So I went back to Devlali and we said, okay, we'll get married. And he was supposed to come to the Gulf. So I said, I'll come to the Gulf with him. But in the interim, there was a position in the pharmacy college in Nashik. And I then joined as a lecturer. So that's when there's such a high when you're in the class and children listen and MS University is a great university, by the way, where they really, really, your fundamentals get sorted out very, very quickly. So I enjoyed that. And then ever since then, I went to Sophia College, Mumbai. And then when we came to Dubai, they wanted a doctorate degree if you had to teach at the university level, which I didn't have. So then I started teaching at the school level. And since then, I've been here.
See, why did I ask that question? And I wanted you to elaborate on possibly a little further. I'll tell you why. There's a huge question, at least in this part of the world, which is that teaching in India is not your first job or your first choice as a job. This is purely that you were not doing many things right. Hence, you are getting into the profession of teaching. And hence the problem of the quality output or whatever. So I think you in a way, by answering that, balances it out that you were not really, until your post-graduation, you were not really wanting to be in a teaching as a profession per se, right? Yet I believe you turned out to be a fairly good teacher, if I may make that observation, right? So here's my view to everyone or every principal who is with us today. Even if you're a teacher who has possibly not taken up this job as his or her first choice, give them a chance, obviously. And hence my question to you, when a person has not taken this profession as a first choice, what do you see in a teacher, Mrs. Nargis? What do you see? Because now
That's actually a great question. And my perception of who the right teacher is has evolved along the way. Initially, of course, one always thinks that you need to have the content right, and the person who knows their stuff is automatically makes a good teacher. But that's not true. For example, I had a math teacher who really knew his stuff, Mr. Mishra. He really knew his stuff, but could he explain it? No, he couldn't. So, and so it's not always the people who know content who can deliver. But when I look today, I look more at the attitude of the teacher. Does she love teaching? Does she love being around children? Does he, if it's a man, does he, is he taking it as a stopgap arrangement? Where's the passion? What's the pedagogical knowledge? Because when you look at TPAC, really, it's that sweet spot between technology, content, and pedagogy. But it's always choose your content, choose your pedagogy, and then the technology. So technology is not the dog, it's the tail, and the tail never wags the dog. So
absolutely, that's an enabler bit. Absolutely, correct.
Yeah, it's an enabler. So when I interview teachers at this point, and we go through interviews through GEMS Education, we go through interviews regularly. We come to Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, all the major tier 1, tier 2 cities that we go to, and we see that the quality of teachers from India has improved tremendously.
Okay, that's
initially, absolutely. Their pedagogical understanding today is at par with the rest of the world. There was a time when we used to take teachers based on experience and their subject knowledge, but not, they lacked in pedagogy. But today, I have to say, I'm very, very impressed with the crop of teachers coming out of India. Their pedagogy is top notch. They're passionate about their work. They really understand what it is to be a teacher. And a teacher doesn't mean just coming to class, delivering a class and moving out. You're so invested emotionally in children today. And the world is going through actually a pandemic of, mental well-being, mental health. And so really understanding children and where they come from is as important a job for a teacher as delivering the lesson. Because if your child is not, in the right mindset to learn, and you can't get them into that frame of mind, then you're not going to be able to get through to them. So does a teacher have it in him or her to, reach out to children, touch their hearts, get them interested in the subject? Can he or she speak around the subject? Because there's so much of research. John Hattie's research tells you, for example, that children who are, whose interest you catch early, they will be interested in your subject and they'll do well. That's actually proven by research. So if you can't hook them and engage them, then there's no point.
So while you highlighted, say, example, passion as a word, right? Obviously, today we, in fact, being an entrepreneur, whenever I hire, I really look for the similar sort of traits which are like passionate towards what the right attitude, if I may say, towards things. Aptitude to me really comes at the last, for that matter. Absolutely, that's one thing. But say, example, if I'm a teacher who is really aspiring to be a teacher, example, I'm a student, because one of the conversation we had very recently in Hyderabad, I was in Hyderabad, and Hyderabad, is a fairly evolved and right side of audience. One of the things which really came up, and I thought this is fabulous, that we really do not, in our career counseling of our students, really ever give teaching as an option of a career to begin with. I mean, that's something which is so, it was so obvious, but it was so underrated in the sense, right? So, and which is why when you talk about the top 10 professions in the world, maybe a student is not vying for teaching as a profession, right? And maybe it's different from India and Dubai purely because of the salary packages or the perks which you get in these two worlds, for that matter. But if you're still hiring an individual, which is for a teaching profession, or you're wanting to give someone an advice when he or she is preparing, what are the things he or she should work on? So when they intentionally are working to be, or they are passionately driven to be a teacher, for that matter.
So someone who's very clear in their minds, and you're so right. There was a time when people were not considering teaching as a serious profession, and career counselors were not guiding children to that. But I think things have changed now, and teaching is a very, very strong profession actually, and career counselors are today guiding children towards, and teaching at different levels. It doesn't have to be at school level. It's so many levels.
It's a huge
and today, yeah. And today even tutoring, we all know the quota story, and we all know so that's a different, that's a different ballgame. But what is the advice to teachers? I think, to my mind, it's just three things. One is know your subject matter really well, because, you see people have all the bells and whistles, but when a question is asked, and if they're not able to, and that's the other thing linked to content, that you don't have to know everything, because today knowledge is available at the click of a button. Right. But it is wisdom that matters, not the knowledge. So how do you guide your children? That's that whole know your subject matter well enough to guide children and put them in the right direction. Because today it's not only about what's in the textbook, and today textbooks are becoming obsolete. Absolutely. But it is more about asking the critical questions. And I've always said this to my students, that it's not giving the right answer that makes you intelligent, but it's asking the right questions. And so as a teacher, are you asking your children the right questions? Do you have it in you to ask the right questions? The Socrative method, for example. And are you equipping yourself to be able to engage it? Are you able to make them connect with the world around them? Because if you're teaching information in silos, you're not doing them a favor. You're actually doing them a disservice. Are you able to get children to connect the dots? And because today, if you look at the OECD Learning Compass 2030, it has 3 transformational competencies. And one of those transformational competencies is creating new value. Are children able to create new value? And so that's the teacher's responsibility, to really motivate the children and guide them in a way to push them in that direction. So I think the first is know your content very well. The second is, make them critical thinkers, not, expand their horizons, make them critical thinkers. And that happens when
multidisciplinary as well, correct.
Yeah. And that happens when you have a growth mindset yourself. Absolutely. If you think you know it all, it's never going to work. So that's number 2. And number 3 is, I always say this, and that's the trickiest bit, assessment. I think, of course, passion, etc., goes with it. We've already talked about it. But really understand how to assess a child's understanding. And it goes way beyond a paper pen test. It goes way beyond just there are so many, there's a repertoire of assessment tools that are today available, and choose the right one at the right time so that children know what they know. And, metacognition is a powerful understanding for children, provided you can, thinking about their own thinking. I don't think we teach the children that at all. They don't know what they're thinking. They just know what they're learning, but they don't know what they're thinking. So, imbibing debating skills and, arguing, but in the right, argumentative, not arguing, being argumentative, but in the right spirit and respectfully so. The term I like to use is respectfully irreverent. So, it's an oxymoron, I know, but...
No, exactly. So just since let's stay on this assessment bit. So example, since you said there is a wide array of things to be looked after in current context, especially after the COVID for that matter. Anything in the past couple of years which caught your attention on the assessment bit, which possibly you would like to share with us, so that anything which can be very basic as well. There's nothing. Yeah.
Sure, just actually 2 things. One is the Ep.02 assessment, and the other one is, open textbook assessments. So a lot of people, especially during the pandemic, because there was the veracity of a test was under question, right? How authentic are these assessments? And so we said, but what are we assessing? So we said, if we are assessing, what's in the textbook, there's no point. At the click of a button, you get that. So can we give children an open book test? Wherein they can have all the books they want open in front of them, but it's that application, it's that 360, understanding of what they're learning that helps them apply it. Can that really happen? And schools have experimented with it. And I think our understanding of open book testing is gone way beyond what it was. And I think teachers are now ready to challenge children in a very, very different way. I think the other way is Ep.02. Let's say it's assessment as learning. We're so focused on assessment for learning and assessment of learning that we forget about assessment as learning. And I think that's really, really powerful because when children understand how they can evaluate their own learning, that is almost metacognitive in its approach. And that's really important.
Okay. Interesting. That last bit is interesting. Obviously, we'll invite you some other time to detail us up that bit as well. Having said this, I know this is getting more academic. So let's take a pause.
Sorry, I can't help it. That's
No, that's completely natural. I would say that's quite possible to happen. So tell us about your trip to Antarctica, in fact, expedition. Let us unwind a bit with that question. Yes, please.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure. So Antarctica came at a time when, so this was in 2012 actually. The seed was sown in 2012, and Sir Robert Swan just walked into our school one day, and I was vice principal of the school at that time, James Modern Academy, and we had a conversation. We were quite fascinated by what he had to say, and so we started engaging with him, and we said, "Will you take students?" And he says, "No, I don't take students. I just come to inspire them," because he was a true environmentalist. He is a true environmentalist. So, and his company is called 2041 because that's when the Antarctic Treaty actually gets over. And then up to now, no one owns Antarctica. But after 21, who knows? 2041, who knows? That's the name of his company. And we were so inspired by his narrative that we said, "Will you take students?" And he said, No, I won't take students. And we said, "Why not?" And he said, "No, they're not. You need to be emotionally mature. You need, it's psychologically, it's draining. I mean, to be out there in the wilderness." And he said, I actually take you. It's not a luxury tour. It's a proper expedition." So we said, we convinced him, and we talked to him, and we showed him everything that our children could do. And he said, "All right, I will." And then, so, and the school is always looking to do something inspirational, something to inspire the kids for a long time. Okay. So we said, okay, so we said, how do we select the children? Because we didn't want it to be, if you can pay for it, you have to go for it. We didn't want. So we said, okay, children pay 50%, we'll raise the funds for 50%. And our chairman, Mr. Sunny Varki, was very magnanimous. He gave $100,000 right away. And he said, I'm sponsoring a major part of the trip. So that was one thing taken care of. But so we had a test for the kids. So they had to learn about the flora and the fauna and the climate and, all the history of Antarctica, the Shackleton and all the other people who had gone, who discovered Antarctica. And then we had a quiz, which they had to get through. Then they had to write a 1,000-word essay on why they think they should be chosen to go to Antarctica. And then they had to go through a physical examination, physical test. And we actually took a girl who was highly asthmatic. Okay. We took her along. Yeah, we took her along. So we were 9 students, 1 Emirati student and myself. I was selected to lead them or to go with them. And this girl, the Emirati girl also, she was recommended to us by the government here. So we took her along. And she's a very, very bright girl. She's a doctor today and she's doing very well for herself. So out of these 9 people, 6 were girls.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
6 were girls, 3 were boys. And so when we decided, we said, okay, we need to prep them. So they went through a whole lot of emotional training, self-regulation, understanding themselves, understanding about amygdala hijack. Why is it when you get angry, what should you be doing? When you're emotionally distraught, how do you anchor yourself? So they went through all of that training. They went through then the sciences and social sciences, taught them about the flora and fauna and climate and then how to keep warm and all the rest of that. And then, of course, it was D-Day, and we flew via Qatar to Ushuaia, which is the southernmost tip, actually Buenos Aires, then Ushuaia, which is the southernmost tip, and from there, then we sailed to Antarctica. When we went, we had to go through the Drake Passage. The Drake Passage is one of the most treacherous stretches of water that you can get on this planet. And you had to actually Drake-proof your cabin, where you had to tape everything down, otherwise it was flung. And I remember there was, a very heavy-set person who was part of the crew, and that person was sitting on a chair in it was a small yacht, and he was sitting where we had dinner, and there was the ship was being tossed, and we went flying from one corner, zoop, to the other side. So it was that bad. And you went out, your nose froze. You were covered all over, but your nose was out. So it was a very, very interesting trip. It taught us so much. I don't know how much in detail you want me to go, but I can stop now.
I want to ask that. Where are those students really? After obviously, they must be.
So one of them actually changed her. Why did we go there? We actually went to, because we were creating a carbon footprint by going there. right? And we said, is it worth going there in the first place? So many of us. But then we said it is worth it because I think what the children brought back was amazing. For 1 year, one of the boys every morning gave what he called the SMS, that's the smart modern statistic, about Antarctica, about the environment, about carbon footprint. They came back and formed this, club that really entrenched looking after the environment. One of the girls changed her profession. She wanted to be a doctor and she landed up being an environmental, what's her exact title? I can't remember exact title, but so she actually worked with dolphins off the coast of Abu Dhabi, and now she's in the US. So she's an environmental scientist, I think, or whatever that title of hers is. So it had a profound impact on.
Exactly. That's what I wanted to arrive at, that you went, obviously, that the very experience was fabulous, and there's no two ways about it. You must have thoroughly enjoyed it. And after that, the real deal starts, which really did it make the difference in our lives, for that matter, right? And as you mentioned, those kids have really taken it up in the right spirit, I would say, right?
Yeah.
And maybe your school got, other kids must have inspired. I mean, that's the real deal of that trip entirely. Okay, so.
Yeah, in fact, as you enter our school, we've got this huge wall-to-ceiling, wallpaper that has an image of all of us on the snow there with Robert Swan with the flag of the UAE.
Correct, so correct. And this was in 2012, you are saying, right?
No, so that year that batch couldn't go, but they promised themselves that the next batch would go. So in 2013, they raised funds, the balance funds, and we took off in 2014. In fact, it's a standing joke that I went as vice principal and came back as principal. So yeah, by the time I knew that.
I was just wanted to get the timeline right. Yes, exactly. Okay.
So we went in 2014 in the month of March. And then we came back, and 1st April, I was appointed principal.
Principal, yes. So that has a real impact, at least on you to begin with. Yes, but that must be through a preparation, not through Antarctica's visit for that. Okay, good. So my last question, and then we will throw it open to the house, which is, now you obviously have worked in India as well, you mentioned that, which is I'm picking up, and now you've been in for a while in Dubai. Any major difference between the two environments, or what are those differences, if I ask you?
So there is surely a difference. I think, so I worked in colleges in India, so Fire College, Pharmacy College, and then of course I worked at the Bloom School. So I didn't work in a government school, I didn't work in a private organization, in a for-profit organization. So I don't know how those schools run in India. But the accountability level in Dubai is very, very high. That's because every year we have inspections. And now we've got the teacher licensing. So when I first came in, I came into the inspection culture, in the inspection regime, because they started in 2009. They actually started school inspections. And they fashioned it on the lines of the UK Ofsted inspections. And there are 7 parameters, 7 performance standards that they evaluate you on. They turn your school upside down for 4 days. You can't hide anything from them. And, so it's documentation of the work that you do. It's, whether it's teaching and learning or assessment, or it's curriculum, or it's, the learning. They actually evaluate learning as well. And whether it's health and safety, whether it's personal and social responsibility, and, accountability, leadership, they just evaluate the whole shebang. So preparing teachers, so somehow I feel that teachers in India have more freedom because it's not so straitjacketed. And that's what I enjoyed at the Doon School. But here, it's an advantage, I would say, and it sounds like a disadvantage, but it's actually an advantage, and I'll tell you why. There is a process that is followed because, how do you make the learning visible? Exactly. And Harvard University actually has a Project Zero, where, visible thinking routines were bandied about, and that's how it came through the Project Zero. And how do you make children's thinking visible? How do you know what they're thinking? And how do you evaluate them? And so it's a very process-driven approach to teaching. And so if you're not on top of the processes, then you can't enjoy the teaching. So it's almost like learning how to drive a car, right? Initially, you don't enjoy driving a car because you're learning, you're steering 10 on 10, your hands have to be there. You put it in, in parking, you put it in first gear, and there's a way of going through it, right? So why we were struggling with learning, because in India, we didn't have any of that. You just came into the class, you taught, and that was it, at least in those days. But here, you were evaluated on everything, on a plenary, on your starter, on your assessment, on your, everything you were assessed on progress made by children, progress made by all children. So how do you demonstrate that? And you have to demonstrate everything in those 40 minutes. So that was a huge learning curve. And that's where we found the gap between teachers in India and teachers in India. Not that teachers in India are they're actually brilliant. They're brilliant teachers. But and so both that process was a little painful. But today, the pedagogical understanding of teachers in India is brilliant. It's way ahead of its, and we're very happy with the teachers who come to us from India. So I can say today we're at par, but for a very large period of time, almost 14, 15 years, I would say, Dubai also gives TIMSS and PISA, which is a benchmark test, and we do very well in the benchmark test, and it's part of the national agenda of the rulers of the land here to put in UAE in the top 15, top 20th for TIMSS and PISA, which are the benchmark tests. So there's a lot of push and drive that goes into that. I know it's becoming academic and heavy again, which is not what you wanted.
No, that's okay. No, because I think that's very important. You're mentioning, and I'll just interject you for a while, which is that, firstly, who is this agency which does it? Is this a government agency who does this evaluation or an assessment for you guys at 4 days, or who is this for that?
So this is the Knowledge and Human Development Authority. It's called the KHDA.
Okay.
And the Knowledge and Human Development Authority has an inspection manual.
Okay.
And you're supposed to look at that. And now they're revamping that. They launch a new manual actually.
Okay.
And that new manual will give you a whole new set of guidelines where they put well-being at the center of everything. The beauty of it, Gaurav, is that they invite educators to be on a steering committee, and
Correct.
they take input from us.
Correct.
And then they evolve their systems, which is a nice thing.
Okay.
But when we first came in, we didn't come in from this culture. So it was a rude shock. We said, what is this?
Exactly.
And it took some time for us to adjust. But
no. Again, then we break that 4 days. So example, a typical day in your school or for a teacher, because he or she is in a way preparing for that 4 day to happen, how do you do it right on a daily basis? What is that different thing which he or she does on a daily basis?
That's an excellent question. So do we prepare for those 4 days right through there? The answer is no. Okay. Because, and the way we explain it to our teachers is always that, for example, when you have a guest, you will not paint the walls and change the furniture in your house. Right. But what you will do is serve your best crockery and cutlery. You'd probably not serve regular dal and serve makhani. Yeah, so that's understandable, right, for a guest. So similarly, when for the 4 days when the inspectors come in, we do things a little differently. But if you're not used to doing it right through the year,
precisely the point. Yes, how do you build up to those 4 days? Example. Yes.
Yeah. So and I'm very pleased to share with you the GEMS Modern Academy, the school that I had, since 2011 has been an outstanding school, which is the highest rating you can get. Currently, it's the only Indian school that is rated outstanding, and we're a dual curriculum school. So to your question of how do we prepare for it, so there is a professional development which is ongoing. So once in a week, 2 hours are put aside for professional development. Okay. And regularly. So all the elements of teaching and learning, there are professional learning communities that are created, and they have constant dialogues. We visit each other's schools to learn best practice, etc. So it's ongoing. But I think the other interesting thing is that we have a quality cycle, which means 3 times in a year, once a term, you get evaluated. And when you get evaluated, so it's announced. We let the teacher know we're coming in on this particular day. And again, you can't fake it. They'll say fake it till you make it, but you can't fake it because children will give it away straight away. They'll say, what is the teacher doing today? Why is the teacher doing suddenly differentiation? Suddenly group work is happening. You can't fake it. And class routines, if they're not set, they're not set. So I think the quality cycle for us, so we then, when we do these drop-in visits, so we do learning walks, we do drop-in visits, and then we do a formal evaluation. Mm-hmm. As part of that formal evaluation, we rate teachers. And based on whether they're rated acceptable, good, very good, outstanding, then there's a path for them to follow. Like the outstanding teachers will then become teacher mentors. They'll run professional development circles themselves. They go and visit other schools. So for them, it's a differentiated approach. Whereas if you're acceptable or even a low good, then you've got to do a peer observation. You've got to find someone who's like at a very good, outstanding level, observe their class, identify 3 practices, practice it in your class, then invite a member of the leadership team to view you and evaluate you again. So there are processes or very, very refined processes in place.
Correct. Exactly. So because I personally feel that that process actually makes you prepared for those 4 days, because you can't really, in your own words, you can't really fake it for those 4 days, right? It is a build-up of 361 days to those 4 days.
Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. With which my questions, more or less, purely because I have to do this on time, are exhausted. I will open up the house for Q&A. Anyone having any observation or a question for Mrs. Khambatta, please do give us a virtual show of hand and we'll help you unmute and then you ask your question or an observation. Right. So, and if you will not ask, then maybe I'll ask a couple of more questions. That's the way it will be. Okay. And if you all can come on the video, we'll get to know you a little more better, right? And we can interact far better. Okay. Lokji has a question. Wonderful. Lokji, over to you.
A very good evening, Gauravji and Mrs. Khambatta. I just wanted to ask you one thing. We have been talking a lot about in the education system, so much is happening. There's a paradigm shift altogether. But one thing which we are missing on, that is how to retain the best of brains in the system. The best people are getting opportunities, getting pushed up by somebody else. Then, what is that we are lacking if we are not able to retain the people with us? There's a lot of exodus altogether from most of the schools, People are jumping from one to another, There is becoming a complete rat race altogether. What suggestion do you have for this issue which has been faced by most of the schools all over the world today? Yeah, over to you.
Thank you, Trilok. I've seen you on a couple of WhatsApp groups, so I'm very happy to engage with you in person. Such a relevant question, and I don't know if I have the answer, but I can tell you what my approach is. And in our school, our attrition rate is as low as 3.9%. And it's difficult to maintain that in a place like Dubai, which has a transient population. Teachers keep coming and going. But for me, it's very, very simple. It's 2 things. One is how invested is the person in the school itself. So for me, I like to create a family feel. I don't know if any of my team is on this call here, but they can speak if they have to. So I like to create a family atmosphere, not in terms of professionalism, but in terms of work culture. And we do, so it's us not an authoritarian regime. We're very, very, flexible when it comes to teachers. If a teacher is in trouble or needs some help or whatever, we will make sure the teacher is comfortable. If the teacher can, is working late one day, we'll make sure the next day there's some time compensation that's given off. So we take care of our people. That's the bottom line. And I think that appeals to a lot of our teachers, knowing that they will be taken care of. And I can go on and on. There's a long list of things that we do. For example, during the pandemic, when there was a lockdown, we actually sent, the teachers' chairs, we sent them home to them because they said we needed them to be comfortable to sit on their chairs. So these are little things. Every Saturday, I personally write an email to all my staff, highlighting. And I believe a principal's role is twofold: to champion and to challenge. And so that's one bit. And as part of that family culture, teachers love to give. They do. So when we get them together for a cause, they feel that they are genuinely contributing to the growth of something or some individual or some group. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is a clear professional development opportunity pathway. And teachers know that if they enter at a teaching level, then these are the 4 things that they can achieve in the next couple of years. Or, and we do, as part of our performance appraisal, we actually work with them on identifying what they'd like to do. And usually 75 to 78% of teachers get what they want. So somebody may want to be a housemaster, somebody may want to be more involved in pastoral care, someone may want to lead on something else. So we identify this with them and have those professional dialogues. And then, on one side, we're creating a family environment, but holding them accountable and a proper systematic procedure and policy driven, process in the school. But at the same time, they know there's opportunity for growth, and they know that the moment they extend themselves, either they are rewarded by acknowledgement, or by as they progressed on the path, or if they're, for example, changing emirates from one emirate to another. GEMS is a large organization. We've got 43 schools here, so we make sure there are transfers within the organization. They go to observe their colleagues in other schools. So I think these are some of the ways we use. I'm not saying we've got it 100%, but by and large, I'm glad that the attrition rate is only 3.9% in my school.
Thank you.
And these teachers, thank you. And Lokesh, these teachers do get higher salaries in other schools. For example, I run an IB school as well as a dual curriculum school, and IBDP teachers are very valued, especially the HL physics, HL math, and we get phenomenal results here. So, other schools are ready to poach, but our teachers don't want to go because they're very secure. They're very well respected. We make sure that our parents respect the teachers very much. We protect the teachers on that front, and that's the culture we create here. That's it.
Just one more question I wanted to ask you. We have to respect the teachers. We have to take care of them. We have to be a little flexible at times. Sometimes we have a little differential treatment for the teachers also, because keeping in mind the need base for the school as well. So don't you feel that at times some teachers try to take the undue advantage of this kind of they take it for granted that we are respecting them. They feel that they are so respectable altogether. I'm not saying against the teachers, but at the same time, sometimes they start dictating their terms and conditions to the system, which at times become a little detrimental, but at the same time, they're very important for the system. So how to balance and how to kind of bring them to the same page with them?
You're right. So there was a time, some time ago, I read this book called Courageous Conversations. And I think that changed perspective for me. And, you have to be an iron fist in a velvet glove. So while you get if I find someone's taking advantage, then I have that very difficult conversation in my office, and I call them in a very respectful manner and say that I've observed this. This is not the way we work. It's not the culture in our school. If it happens again, then this is the policy. Please go through the policy so you know what the expectations are, and they get it very quickly. And at the same time, we have some brilliant. So that's, I think, part of who we are as educators, as heads of schools. We know people who we can activate, to talk to these teachers about culture, about what the expectations are, etc., and befriend them. And I think the little thing that I do is give them an opportunity to prove themselves very quickly and have the community shower accolades on them. So when a teacher feels valued, then they don't want to do that. And it's happened in the past. Very recently, I had to let a senior teacher go because the teacher was just not contributing. She was doing things for herself. She was a sand artist and she was doing brilliant sculptures externally, but doing nothing for the school. And we let her go to America. We let her go to Odisha. We let her go to different places for the sand sculpture, but she just was not contributing to the school community. So we had to have that difficult conversation and say, thank you, but no thank you. So I guess that knowing when to, and there's a stop loss, as they say.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I think that's a good book. I should also be reading that one, right? Courageous Conversations, you said, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I have Parush is driving. So he said the moment he'll stop, he'll ask the question. Parush is from Bareilly. He's the owner of a school. I have Priya Dias asking the question. Over to you, Priya.
Yeah. Good evening, ma'am, and good evening, Gaurav. Actually, I just wanted to ask that, ma'am, what is the recruitment process? What do you look for in a teacher? Is it a one-day process, or you all have a continuous 2-3 days process to identify that right person as a teacher?
Thank you, Priya. I think we went through this earlier. Perhaps you joined in late. But if you're specifically asking for a recruitment process, well, we have two ways of recruiting. One is we come to India for a recruitment drive, and the other is we have a local recruitment drive. So if it's a local candidate, then we first, of course, have a telephonic conversation with them. And if we feel that they tick all the boxes, we invite them into the school. And, we have a personal one-on-one where, as I shared with Gaurav earlier, we check their passion, their how suitable will they be around children. We ask them in different ways, different questions. We get to know their background, what drives them, etc. But at the acid testers, we put them in a class with naughty kids. And if they're able to handle them, if they're able to hook the kids, if they're able to converse with the kids, ask the right questions, then there's no doubt in their mind. Of course, as part of GEMS education, we have a safe recruitment policy where all our staff, senior staff, are trained on safe recruitment policy. So we do a police check, we do make sure there's been no history of child abuse, we make sure that there's been no complaint about the teacher, so we do a reference check. All of that happens after we decide that, yes, this is the candidate that we want. When all those checks come clear, then we hire them.
Oh, thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Mathura ji, your question. You'll have to unmute. Mathura ji, if you're there, you can unmute and ask your question. I think we lost him, or his network is poor. Yeah, so I wanted to quickly check in with one question which came to my mind. While obviously everything looks invincible right now, the day Mrs. Nargish Khambatta is not feeling well, how she lifts her spirit? What is her go-to thing for that matter? Yes.
That's such a lovely question. So it rarely happens for any educator. I go, when I wear my badge, in fact, I just come from work. So when I wear my badge every day, it's a reminder to myself of why am I in this position? What is my responsibility? And it's a daily reminder to myself. And I think I have a sense of purpose, and I love what I do. Absolutely. And I exude that, and I think people get it. So it's really difficult to get me down. I'm saying this very humbly, but I so love what I do, and I love my staff, and I love the support staff and everybody, and they love me in turn. So it's very difficult for me to be down, but we all have our ups and downs. But for me, I walk down to the KG corridors, and I just sit down with the KG children and I play with them for a bit. And they ask such innocent and such sweet questions. And one of them comes and says, "But your hair has become very white." I know.
That lifts the mood, certainly.
Totally lifts the mood. And they're so honest. The children are very, very, sometimes they can be brutally honest, and then you laugh at their honesty. So it's nice.
Wonderful. Again, another question which comes, apart from that book which you recommended, any other books would you love which really inspired you, which really made you possibly or changed you in any way for that matter? Yeah, any book?
Sure. There's a book called Good to Great.
Okay.
I'm sure we've read it. So there are loads of books, Gaurav, and I for one keep reading. But more than books now, I've shifted to, so I'm a social media person. I love being on social media, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, not so much, but Instagram and Twitter a lot. And Twitter has one of the best and free professional development it's platforms that I've ever known. Because if you follow the right people and you chase some of the links that they say, some of the best learnings for me have been via Twitter. So for me, that sorry.
Yeah, sure, please. Sorry.
No, carry on with what you're saying.
No. I was just saying that so far we thought the utility of social media is way too below par. You made the different transition towards it altogether, right? Thank you.
Oh, absolutely.
You were saying something, sorry.
I was saying that when you asked that question, I thought you were saying if Nargish Khambatta is not going to school that day, what happens? And I want to share that in our school, we truly follow a distributed leadership model. And by that I mean that if the principal is not in the chair for 1 year, I can tell you the school will run itself.
Wow.
But yeah, we've got such strong systems, and I'm totally dispensable. And any member on my team is dispensable because we've got succession planning at every level. Wow. And we've done that intentionally so. We've gone distributed to such an extent. I don't have a head boy, I don't have a head girl, I don't have house captains, I don't have prefects in the school. We follow the holacracy model because if you think about it, The reason why there were head boys and head girls, we blindly followed the archaic system that was followed in the UK. And in England, because they had those boarding houses, and the housemasters needed discipline in the house. And so they appointed somebody. And so our boarding schools have followed that. But the moment you switch that, and we ran an almost 8-month long process where we decided that we need to change our vision, because our vision was becoming stale and it wasn't speaking to us anymore. There were just words on a wall. And so we engaged with the school community, and after 8 months, we crafted a vision statement that had only 7 words: inspiring children to be positive change makers. That's it. And we said, we held ourselves to a higher higher value, because we said we struggled between empowering and inspiring. And for 3 days we argued about it, and we said, it's easy to empower, it's not easy to inspire. And when you have head boy, head girl, you're empowering the kids, but are you inspiring them? And at the end of the day, you're just, fostering an authoritarian regime. But is that what our children want? That's not what they want. And today, if you look at what the children are doing, we've got people doing cryptocurrencies. I don't know, how many of you use Zepto? Can I just have you use Zepto, right, Gaurav? Adit Palicha, it was a student from our school. Okay. In 2020, he graduated. He got admission from our school. Mm-hmm. He got admission in Stanford, decided not to go to Stanford. He and Kaivalya Gandhi, another boy who was in our school and then joined another school, but they've been friends. They went to Mumbai, they started Kirana Cart, sold Kirana Cart for $350,000, then started Zepto, and today they're knocking on the doors of a unicorn, evaluated at 800 million plus.
Yeah, absolutely. Zepto is an in thing right now in India.
Absolutely. 2020, he graduated from James Modern Academy.
2020, not bad, yeah. Brilliant. And yes. This is something, I obviously know Zepto, but I don't know the background of this. Oh, lovely.
So you can just Google Adit Palicha. And this young boy, and there are so many in the pipeline like that. So many. That's because we've done away with this whole system.
But these Indian boys studying in your school, was that the sir? How was it really?
Yeah,
was there Indian boys in Dubai? Okay.
Yeah,
oh, fabulous. Because they have come back to Dubai, Mumbai, you're saying, right? They venture from Mumbai. Oh, yes. So I have a couple of more questions, which is one has come to me on a chat. How do you assess the teaching of teachers in classroom? Any format that you follow or the strategy that you adopt? That's a question from Ambala Kant, APS.
Sure. So we have a proper evaluation rubric, which is shared with teachers, and we deconstruct it with them. And we tell them clearly. So we've got 9 parameters that we evaluate them on, including, progress by all children, including was the prior learning assessed before they began. So basically all the elements of a lesson plan are put in the form of a rubric. And what does outstanding look like? What does very good look like? What is good? What does acceptable look like? We've got that a clear rubric, which we go through with them and say, in order to get an outstanding for, let's say, assessment in the classroom, effectively evaluating assessment, this is what you do. Use of technology, effective use of technology, support, inclusion support for a child. All of those 9 parameters are evaluated. There is a rubric I'm happy to share if you like. I mean, through Mr. Gaurav, you can send me your email address and I'll share the rubric with you. So we follow that rubric. So for a learning walk, we do it differently. But there's another very nice method, which if I have the time, I can share with.
Please, all yours.
So one is a formal rubric that we use, but the other is a very, very nice system. I can't recollect the name now, but basically it's a 4-point scale where when you enter the class, you're just seeing what are the children, what does that class look like? Is it didactic? Is the teacher talking and everyone's just listening? Are the children engaged in doing work? Are they working in groups? That itself gives you an idea of the teaching culture and the learning culture in the school. And I always tell our teachers that it's not about the teaching, it's about the learning. You're a facilitator for learning. You're not a teacher, because children can learn themselves today. They don't need a teacher. Absolutely don't need a teacher, to be honest, but they need a teacher to guide them. They need to ask them the right questions to guide their thinking, to direct them to the realms of knowledge that they require for a deeper understanding. So, sorry, I can go on and on.
No problem. And in fact, I just pulled out this article. These 2 19-year-old scaled Zepto company into a 900 million in 9 months. Adit Palicha,
Palicha.
I believe, and there's some other gentleman.
Kaivalya Gandhi.
And they are very young. They're 19. Oh, wow, lovely. That's a fabulous story. Wonderful. Okay.
And Gaurav, this happens. So I'm again happy to share with anybody else. But our school, I told you we have a distributive leadership system. So we've evolved something through the school where there's a vertical curriculum that's been constructed, which is almost like a hidden curriculum, but it's factored on the principles of design thinking, Stanford University's design thinking. And so it's a challenge-based curriculum initially, and in middle school. Then in 9 and 10, they do EIP, which is the Entrepreneurship Innovation Program. And then in 11 and 12, they do Project Prism, which is the multidisciplinary, bringing everything together. And we've had 9 of our students publish papers in international journals. So, and this happens, I do believe, because our teachers are so passionate and because they've constructed a vertical construct, which is building the skills of the children to enable them to be so empowered that they can, and so inspired that they can do all the things that they do.
No, fabulous. In fact, this entire thing, which obviously apart from the vertical bit, which you mentioned, I wanted to ask that, do you have like a very concerted effort toward bringing entrepreneurship in your, I mean, or do you orient them, or what do you do about that? Exactly.
So so Dubai itself is an entrepreneurial hub, and they used to run a young entrepreneurs competition, and which we encouraged our children to be part of. But we have a brilliant teacher in Lakshmi Satyan. She's from Kerala and she's absolutely brilliant. So she runs a negotiation club and she trains a lot of our children. So and of course we have a group of people who do that. And then we've got a technology innovation lead. So ours is a school, the only school in the Middle East that's been granted incubator status by the Hamdan, by Prince Hamdan's, Sheikh Hamdan's office. Okay. So we are officially an incubator.
Oh, wow. Interesting. That is again that's good, in fact, because I think Y Combinator and all that stuff have supported your boys, in fact, there. Lovely. Fabulous. Okay. I have Mathura ji coming back. Mathura ji, you have a question? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Gaurav sir. It's really wonderful discussion going on. I'm really happy to listen this one. It's really great opportunity to listen the great esteemed educationist and moderated by Gaurav sir. Really nice going on. And madam, what I was asking from you, you told that without a principal, even 1 year school can run. It's really wonderful sentence you have spoken with the help of decentralized leadership skill. But when we speak, it's really good one. Even we can try. But practically, how it can be executed in schools? Can you elaborate in detail, ma'am, please?
Thank you for asking that question, Mr. Mathura. So it's not happened overnight. It's taken some time, but I can tell you, so there are processes that we follow, but it's empowering the people. So for example, first getting the leaders to believe that they can lead and they don't need to be micromanaged. And so I'm constantly having sessions with my leadership team where, we walk through, and we have many professional development sessions with them. But I think the bottom line is that when they believe that they are empowered to lead, that they don't need someone else taking a decision for them, they can take decisions on their own. That's when they own their section and they own what they do. And when they own what they do, we actually applaud it. I told you my role is twofold: to challenge and to champion. So when they come to me, my method is that they come to me with a plan, we discuss the plan, and then they go and execute it. Also, when, for example, if we're doing a big project, I meet the team and lay out the expectations very clearly. What are the anticipated outcomes? Once they know what the anticipated outcomes are, so what are success markers along the way? All that gets defined, and then I only check in at the point with the success markers. And today that process is so fine-tuned that it's the other way around. I don't need to do any more checks. But that, like I said, that mutual trust has developed over a period of time. We've got, for example, there was a student who came and complained to me. I had given a student permission for something in grade 9. And the student went back and the supervisor of grade 9 said, sorry, you can't do that. And the boy said, but Mrs. Khambatta has given permission. He says, I'm telling you, you cannot do that. I'm not disrespecting the principal's permission, but this is my section. You cannot do that. So the boy came running to me thinking, and his mother also came thinking that, oh, Mrs. Khambatta is going to, be upset with this. And they came to me and they said, Ms. Khambatta, sir, overruled you. I said, he's right in doing so. That's his section. I cannot take a decision in his section. I was at fault for taking a decision for his section. So when your supervisors believe that the principal is there to back them all the way, they are confident in taking the decisions they do. And then they don't depend on you. But that doesn't mean they let loose, that there are processes in place where we go through all the expectations and then of course they deliver. But they are so sure that if they take a decision, I will support that decision and not overturn it. If it needs to be overturned, then I'll make sure that I explain the rationale to the people. And very rarely, maybe 2 or 3 times in a year, an occasion like this comes where I have to take a decision different from one that's been given. And sometimes, even if it's not the best decision, it's okay. I allow them to take it and then talk them through, the coaching model. It takes time, Mathuraji, but once that coaching model sets in, everybody has a coaching mindset, it works like magic.
Okay, wonderful. That in a way.
Absolutely right, ma'am. Thank you so much.
I think we're getting a response here as well. So thank you very much. Firstly, I was just checking on the time. We're already 6:33 by my clock. So having said this, right, any further question? If we do not have, we'll say a quick thank you to our guest and then we'll take your leave. Okay, but having said this, I'll quickly give a bit of a sort of a summary that I think she's not just done the education bit. I think she's also done a lot of adventurous stuff as well, which is really, really interesting to hear. And one thing which I kept it for the last, which I'll just say, which is that she wants to eclipse the Everest camp at the age 62, right? That brings a big smile on your face. And having said this, I truly believe you will do so. And thank you very much for your valuable time, Mrs. Khambatta. Lovely getting to know you, getting to meet you for the first time. Obviously, this is just a beginning of our association. We will really keep inviting you many a times so that you can come back and inspire us. And actually, I mean, at least my own understanding is that you have tons of knowledge, which you are actually wanting to explain, detail it out further. So we'll break it down into smaller sessions for that matter, maybe. And that's the way we will go from here on. Right. So if I do not see any virtual show of hand, I'll say thank you to each one of you joining in. And obviously, final word remains with Mrs. Khambatta. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Gaurav. To every educator that's here, I just want to say that I think the world is a better place because of educators, to be honest. We've gone through such difficult times recently, but you've kept everybody sane. And you've really lifted spirits during this difficult time. And I think, I don't think you wait for anybody else to award you or reward you for what you've done. I think just knowing that you've made a difference is what keeps you going and will continue to keep you going. So don't ever underestimate the kind of work that you're doing. And on days that you feel down, just think of that one life you've touched and made a difference to, who will probably go through life smiling because of you. Thank you so much for the session, Gauravji, and really appreciate it.
Not at all. Absolutely our pleasure. And I mentioned that this is just a start and everyone is pouring in their thank yous. And I believe, yes, we will send you that rubric. We will request ma'am, or we'll give your email ID to her and you can directly send it to her. Okay. So thank you very much. Once again, take care of yourself and everybody take care of yourself. The COVID numbers are increasing. So please do not let loose and stay safe and everybody take care. Right. Bye-bye. Thank you.